The quiet before the storm. The colony ship Odyssey floated in the cold dark between stars, its engines dead and its lights dim. Inside, 47 children waited. They were not soldiers or scientists. They were kids, some as young as 6, others just turning 16. They had been on their way to a new home on Proxima Beta, a planet humans had only recently begun to settle. Their parents had signed them up for the journey months ago, hoping for cleaner air, wider skies, and a fresh start. Now they were stranded and no one was coming to get them. 3 adults remained with them. Mrs. Carter, a retired schoolteacher with kind eyes and steady hands. Mr. Ellis, a quiet botanist who knew how to grow food in metal boxes. And Lisa, the youngest of the group, a medical trainee who had volunteered for the trip to gain experience. They tried to keep things calm, but worry hung in the recycled air like fog. The ship's main engine had failed 3 days ago during a routine jump. Backup systems kept oxygen flowing and lights on, but they couldn't move. And worse, they couldn't call for help clearly. Their long-range comms were damaged, sending only broken whispers into the void. Then, without warning, something answered. A shadow slid across the stars outside the viewport. It was massive, angular, and covered in sharp ridges that caught the distant light like teeth. The children pressed their faces to the glass, eyes wide. Some whispered. Others held their breath. The adults exchanged glances. They knew that shape. It was Zenthari. The Zenthari were not allies, but they weren't enemies either. They were members of the Galactic Council, a group of species that governed shared space. Humans had only joined 5 years earlier, and tension still ran high. The Zenthari valued order above all else. Their laws were strict, their punishment swift, and their view of other species often cold. A voice crackled over the ship's comm, sharp and metallic. Colony Vessel Odyssey. Power down all systems. You are in violation of Sector Quarantine Protocol 7 Gamma. Prepare for boarding, Mr. Ellis frowned. Quarantine? We haven't even landed anywhere. Mrs. Carter put a hand on his arm. Don't argue. Just do what they say. The adults powered down non-essential systems. The lights dimmed further. The hum of life support grew quieter. Then came the thud of docking clamps, the hiss of airlocks equalizing. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Zenthari soldiers entered the ship. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with gray, segmented skin and black eyes that reflected no light. They wore armor that looked grown, not built. Smooth, organic plates that shifted slightly as they moved. They carried weapons that hummed with stored energy. Their leader stepped forward. His name was Creel Vox, and he spoke in a voice like grinding stone. You have entered a restricted zone without clearance. Your vessel carries unregistered biological material. You will be detained for inspection. Biological material? Lisa asked, confused. We're just transporting children to a new colony. Creel Vox's gaze swept over the group of kids huddled near the mess hall. Minors are classified as high-risk biological units under council law. Until we confirm they carry no pathogens or genetic anomalies, they must be isolated. Mrs. Carter stepped in front of the children. You can't separate them from us. They're scared. They need us. Your emotional state is irrelevant, Creel Vox said flatly. Comply or force will be used. The adults had no choice. The Zenthari moved quickly. They led the children away in small groups, placing soft restraints on their wrists. Not tight, but enough to stop them from running. The kids didn't cry out. They were too stunned. Jake, a 12-year-old with messy brown hair, held Lily's hand as they were guided down the hall. Lily, 10 and small for her age, kept her eyes on the floor, her lower lip trembling but silent. The adults were taken to a different section of the Zenthari ship, the Iron Covenant. Their quarters were clean, quiet, and windowless. A single message appeared on the wall screen. Detention period, undetermined. Back on Earth, thousands of light years away, no one knew what had happened. The Odyssey's last signal had been a garbled burst of static. United Earth Defense Command logged it as a possible comms malfunction. They marked it for follow-up in 72 hours. Standard procedure for civilian vessels. Aboard the Iron Covenant, the children sat in a large white room with no corners. The walls curved gently and the floor was warm to the touch. There were no beds, only padded benches. No toys, no books, no windows. Just silence and soft light from above. Jake tried to make a joke. Hey, at least we don't have homework now. A few kids smiled weakly. Lily leaned against him. Do you think they'll let us go soon? Of course, he said, though he wasn't sure. In another part of the ship, Krelvox reviewed the Odyssey's manifest. 47 miners, 3 guardians. No weapons, no contraband. Technically, they had broken no major laws, just failed to file updated transit papers after their engine trouble. But Zenthari code demanded caution. Better to detain than risk contamination. He filed the report and moved on to his next duty. To him, this was routine, a minor incident. He did not know that humans did not see their children as biological units. He did not know that on Earth, every missing child triggered citywide searches, national alerts, and sleepless nights for strangers who had never met them. He did not know that to take a human child from their guardians was not just a legal error. It was a declaration. For now, the children waited, the adults paced, and the Iron Covenant sailed on, unaware that a storm was already gathering behind them, born not of weapons or fleets but of something far more dangerous, the quiet, rising fury of a species that would move stars to protect its young. Whispers across the void days passed aboard the Iron Covenant, and the children settled into a strange kind of routine. The Zenthari gave them food, tasteless nutrient paste that came in soft tubes and water that had no smell. They were allowed to move within their holding chamber, but never beyond. No one spoke to them except to give orders. The silence pressed in like a weight. But humans, even young ones, are not easily broken. Jake started drawing on the smooth walls with a piece of charcoal he'd hidden in his pocket, a habit from Earth, where he used to sketch birds in his backyard. Lily began humming songs her grandmother used to sing. Others played quiet games, counting breaths, guessing star names, telling stories about home. They missed their families, yes, but they refused to let fear take everything. Then one morning, a different Zenthari entered their chamber. He was smaller than the guards, his armor less bulky, his movements less stiff. His name was Tailmir, and he was a junior logistics officer assigned to monitor the detainees. His job was simple: check vitals, log behavior, report anomalies. He expected fear, maybe anger. He did not expect a 10-year-old girl to look up and say, "Hi, do you have a name?" Tailmir paused. "I am Tailmir. I'm Lily," she said, smiling. "That's Jake. He draws really good dragons." Tailmir had studied human files. He knew they used names often, even with strangers. But seeing it in person felt odd. Among the Zenthari, names were only spoken in formal settings or by superiors. To offer yours freely was strange. Still, he nodded. "Your vitals are stable. That is good. Do you play games?" Jake asked, holding up a deck of worn playing cards. "We've got Uno." "Well, almost. We lost the wild cards, but we made new ones." Tailmir hesitated. Protocol said no interaction beyond necessity, but his curiosity won. He sat on the edge of the bench, careful not to touch anything. "What is Uno?" For the next hour, Jake taught him. Tailmir struggled at first. Colors, numbers, rules that changed based on fun. But slowly he understood. When he won a round by accident, Lily clapped. Tailmir felt something unfamiliar in his chest. It wasn't pride. It was lighter, warmer. Over the next few days he returned, not every shift, but often enough that the children began to look for him. He brought no gifts. Zenthari law forbade it, but he listened. He learned that Marcus missed his dog, that Nina wanted to be an astronaut, that Ben's little sister was only 3 and he worried she wouldn't remember him. Tailmir had been raised in a creche like all Zenthari young. Parents did not raise offspring. The state did. Emotion was trained out early. Care was duty, not feeling. Yet here were these small humans sharing stories like bread, offering kindness like it cost nothing. It confused him. It also moved him. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the Odyssey's silence had finally raised alarms. A civilian deep space listening post near Titan picked up a faint looping signal, a child's voice cut with static. "Mom, Dad, we're okay. Please come get us." Beneath it, a Zenthari voice snapped, "Cease vocalization. Non-compliance will extend detention." The recording was raw, unedited. It was sent to United Earth Defense Command. But before officials could contain it, a 16-year-old named Chris, who ran a popular space newsfeed from his garage in Austin, uploaded it online with the caption, "They took our kids." Within hours, the internet exploded. Parents shared the clip with trembling hands. Schools held vigils. News channels played the audio on loop. HFY orchids trended in every country. Governments demanded answers. United Earth scrambled to respond. Captain Daniel Holt, Commander of the cruiser Vanguard was pulled from shore leave. He was calm, experienced, and known for keeping his head in crises. His orders were clear. Locate the Odyssey, assess the situation, and resolve it without violence. Diplomacy first, the Admiral told him. But bring them home. Holt gathered his crew and launched within the hour. The Vanguard was fast, faster than any Xanthari ship, and armed, though he hoped not to use its weapons. As they jumped toward the last known coordinates of the Odyssey, Holt reviewed everything he could find on the Xanthari. Rigid, lawful, proud. He knew this would be delicate. Aboard the Iron Covenant, Talmir grew more uneasy. He checked the official logs again. The children had been cleared of all biohazards 2 days ago, yet Krell Vox had not released them. Why, he asked his superior. The reply was cold. The humans filed incorrect transit forms. They must remain until legal review is complete. But the children are not responsible for paperwork, Talmir said. Responsibility is collective under Xanthari law, came the answer. Do not question command. That night, Talmir watched through the observation window as Lily tried to teach another girl how to braid hair. They laughed softly, their fingers clumsy but trying. He thought of his own youth. No laughter, no games, only drills and recitations. For the first time, he wondered if his people were missing something vital. He also wondered what would happen if Earth found out. He didn't have to wait long. A priority alert flashed across the Iron Covenant's bridge. A human warship was approaching at high speed. Identification confirmed. UEC Vanguard. Krell Vox stood tall. They come to negotiate. Let them wait, but Talmir knew better. Humans did not send warships to wait. They sent them to act. As the Vanguard closed in, its comms channel opened. Captain Holt's voice was calm but firm. Xanthari vessel Iron Covenant. This is Captain Daniel Holt of the United Earth Cruiser Vanguard. We request immediate release of the 47 human miners in your custody. They are not criminals. They are children, Krell Vox replied without hesitation. Your request is noted. However, legal procedures must be followed. Stand down and await further notice. Holt did not argue. He simply said, understood, and cut the channel. But Talmir saw the truth in the silence that followed. The humans were not leaving, and they were not asking again. In the holding chamber, Jake looked up as if he felt it too. They're coming for us, he whispered. Lily nodded. I know. And far away across the void, an entire planet held its breath, united by one simple truth. No one takes human children and walks away unscathed. The council chamber erupts. Captain Daniel Holt did not waste time. After his request was denied, he opened a secure channel to United Earth and sent everything he had. Ship logs, sensor readings, and most importantly, a live feed from a small drone he'd launched near the Iron Covenant. The drone hovered just outside the Xanthari ship's viewport. Its lens focused on the holding chamber where the children sat together, small and still. Back on Earth, the feed was routed straight to the Galactic Council's emergency session. The council met in a vast ring-shaped chamber orbiting a quiet star, with representatives from over 200 species seated in tiered arcs. Humans had only a single seat. But today, Ambassador Elena Cruz stood at the central podium, her expression calm but her hands clenched tight behind her back. The feed played on every screen in the chamber. Silence filled the room as the delegates watched Lily press her palm against the glass, as if she could feel the stars beyond. Then a voice came through, soft, young, and trembling only a little. We didn't do anything wrong, Lily said, looking straight into the drone's lens. We just wanted to see the stars. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Many species had offspring, but few treated them with the same fierce tenderness as humans. The Qatari delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Vrel, whose young were raised in communal nurseries, exchanged glances. Even the stoic Tharn, who rarely showed emotion, tilted their heads in what might have been concern. Then Elena Cruz stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not gesture wildly. She simply looked at the Xanthari representative, a high-ranking official named Zor Ven, and said, You detained human children? Are you insane? The words hung in the air like a blade. Zor Ven stiffened. This is a matter of legal procedure, not insanity. The humans failed to file updated transit documents after their vessel malfunctioned. Under Council Law 7 Gamma, that constitutes a quarantine breach. Why quarantine? Elena asked, her voice low. You locked up kids because of paperwork? The law makes no distinction based on age, Zor Ven replied coldly. Then your law is broken, Elena said. Murmurs grew louder. Some delegates nodded. Others looked away. The truth was, many had long suspected the Zinthari used obscure regulations to assert control over newer species. But no one had challenged them until now. Captain Holt's voice cut in over the comm. Ambassador, I've just received confirmation. The children were cleared of all biohazards 48 hours ago. They're being held for administrative delay, not safety. Elena turned to the council chair, an elder Vrel named Silra. I move for an emergency vote. Immediate release of the miners and a full review of Zinthari enforcement practices under council law. Zor Ven rose. This is an internal Zinthari matter. The council has no authority. You boarded a human vessel in neutral space, Elena interrupted. You detained non-combatants without cause. That makes it everyone's matter. Silra raised a three-fingered hand. The motion is in order. All in favor? Hands, claws, and tendrils rose across the chamber. Not all, but enough. The vote passed. Zor Ven's face darkened. This is a mistake. The Zinthari will not be dictated to by emotional outbursts. It's not emotion, Elena said quietly. It's principle. Back aboard the Iron Covenant, Krelvox received the council's order. His jaw tightened. He had expected pushback, but not this fast, not this unified. He glanced at the holding chamber feed. The children were playing a quiet game, passing a small stone in a circle. They looked calm, but he knew better now. He had seen the footage from Earth, the protests, the silent vigils, the way entire cities had gone dark in solidarity. He also saw Tail Mir standing near the chamber door, watching the children with something like sorrow in his eyes. Release them, Krelvox finally said to his second-in-command. Sir, prepare transport back to their vessel, and restore their comms. But before the order could be carried out, Captain Holt sent another message. We're sending a shuttle to retrieve them. No Zinthari personnel will touch them again. Krelvox wanted to argue, but he knew the council was watching. He gave a stiff nod. As you wish. As the human shuttle docked, the children stood slowly. Jake held Lily's hand again. Marcus hugged Nina. They didn't cheer. They didn't run. They walked with quiet dignity, as if they understood the weight of what had just happened. Telmir watched them go. As Lily passed, she turned and said, Thank you for playing Uno with us. He didn't know how to respond, so he simply bowed his head, a gesture not common among Zinthari. Aboard the shuttle, the children were wrapped in warm blankets and given water that tasted like home. A medic checked each one gently. Captain Holt knelt beside Lily. You okay? She nodded. They weren't mean, just confused. He smiled faintly. Sometimes that's worse. Back in the council chamber, the session continued, but the mood had shifted. Species that had once dismissed humans as loud and impulsive now saw something else. A people who would move heaven and earth for their young, not with rage, but with resolve. Elena Cruz returned to her seat. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply sat, her eyes on the stars beyond the chamber's transparent dome. But the message was clear. Humanity had drawn a line, and the galaxy had just learned not to cross it. The storm breaks. After the children were safely aboard the Vanguard, Captain Daniel Holt expected relief. Instead, he felt the calm before something much bigger. Earth did not celebrate. They did not send victory messages or demand apologies. They simply went quiet, and that silence was louder than any war cry. Within hours, every human colony, station, and ship across known space received the same order from United Earth Command. Suspend all non-essential activity. Trade shipments stopped. Cargo freighters powered down in dock. Medical supply lines to allied species were paused. Research labs sealed their doors. Even entertainment networks went dark, replacing shows with a single message. We stand with our children. It was not a strike. It was not a threat. It was a withdrawal. The effect was immediate. The Qatari, who relied on human-made nanobots to treat a rare blood disorder in their young, sent 3 urgent pleas in under an hour. The Vrel, whose deep space navigation systems used human quantum processors, found their fleets stranded in neutral zones. The Tharn, who traded rare minerals for human agricultural tech, watched their food synthesizers shut down one by one. No one had seen anything like it. Humans had never acted as one before, not truly. But now, from Mars to the outer colonies, from scientists to dock workers, everyone understood the same thing. When human children are harmed, the whole species responds. Not with fire, but with Absu. Ants on the Iron Covenant. Krelvox watched the reports flood in. His ship's comms lit up with messages from Zenthari High Command, all demanding answers. Why had he provoked the humans? Why hadn't he followed standard release protocols? He tried to explain that he had only followed the law, but the law no longer mattered. What mattered was the cost, and the cost was rising. T.L. Mir, still shaken by the children's departure, made a choice. He accessed the internal logs from the detention period, logs that showed the biohazard scan had come back clean on day 2. Yet Krelvox had ordered continued isolation due to pending administrative review. Telmir copied the files, encrypted them, and sent them to a neutral data broker known for working with the Galactic press. By morning, the truth was everywhere. News feeds across the Council worlds ran headlines like, Zenthari lied about human children and paperwork over kids. Public opinion turned fast. Species that had once tolerated Zenthari strictness now called it cruelty. Even longtime Zenthari allies began to distance themselves. The Vrel ambassador publicly stated, holding children for clerical errors is not justice. It is fear dressed as order. Krelvox was summoned to a private hearing with Zenthari High Command. He argued that he had upheld Zenthari honor and law. His superiors did not care. You have cost us trade, trust, and standing, one elder told him. The humans have not fired a single shot, and yet we are bleeding. Back on Earth, the people waited. There were no riots, no calls for war, just quiet determination. In schools, teachers spoke about unity. In homes, families gathered and held each other tighter. In spaceports, workers checked every bolt on every ship, ready to act if needed, but hoping it wouldn't be. Captain Holt kept the vanguard near the Iron Covenant, not as a threat, but as a witness. He knew the Zenthari were cornered. Pride would make them resist, but survival would make them yield. He was right. On the 4th day, Krelvox transmitted a formal message to United Earth. The Zenthari government acknowledges errors in judgment. The human miners were detained without sufficient cause. We offer full release, medical clearance, and safe passage to Proxima Beta at our expense. The message was cold, but it was enough. United Earth did not reply right away. They let the silence stretch for 6 hours, long enough for the Zenthari to feel the weight of it. Then a simple response came. Accepted. Do not make this mistake again. The moment the message was sent, human systems came back online. Cargo ships reignited their engines. Medical shipments resumed. Labs reopened. But the message had been sent. Humanity would cooperate, but never at the cost of its young. Tail Meyer requested a transfer. He asked to join the new Cultural Liaison Program, being formed between Earth and the Council. His request was approved, though many in his command called him a traitor. He didn't care. He had seen something in those children, something his own people had lost. As the vanguard escorted the Odyssey toward Proxima Beta, the children looked out the windows. They were tired but not broken. Jake sketched a new dragon, one with wings made of stars. Lily hummed a song about coming home. Captain Holt stood on the bridge watching the stars slide by. His first officer asked, "Do you think they'll learn?" "Some will," Holt said. "Others will wait until the next time. But now they know what happens when they cross that line." And across the galaxy, species that had once seen humans as loud, messy, and emotional began to understand something deeper. Humans did not fight for power or territory. They fought for each other, especially the smallest among them. The storm had broken not with thunder but with stillness, and in that stillness, the universe learned to tread carefully around human children. Echoes of consequence. The children returned to Earth not as victims, but as quiet symbols of something the galaxy was only beginning to understand. There were no grand parades, no medals, no speeches on every news channel. Instead, families met them at spaceports with open arms and tear-streaked faces. Parents held their sons and daughters close as if making sure they were real. Neighbors brought food. Teachers welcomed them back to classrooms with soft voices and extra patience. It was simple. It was human. Jake went home to a house that smelled like his mom's cinnamon bread. Lily ran straight to her grandmother's garden, where the roses were just starting to bloom. Marcus found his dog waiting by the door, tail wagging like it never stopped. Life returned to normal, but it carried a new weight, a quiet knowing that they had been seen, not just by their own people, but by the stars themselves. Captain Daniel Holt visited them before they settled back into school. He didn't wear his uniform. just a plain jacket and a tired smile. He found Jake and Lily sitting on a park bench near the spaceport, sharing a bag of candy they'd been given on the shuttle ride home. "You didn't just come back," he told them, sitting beside them. "You reminded everyone what we're made of." Lily looked up. "What are we made of?" "Care," he said. "And courage." "Even when you're scared," Jake nodded slowly. He didn't say much, but he tucked the words away like a stone in his pocket for later. Far from Earth, the Galactic Council met again. This time, the agenda was different. A new proposal sat on every delegate's screen, the Juvenile Protection Accord. It was a simple document but powerful. It stated that no species under Council law could detain, isolate, or question minors without immediate guardian presence and clear, urgent cause. It also required cultural sensitivity training for all enforcement officers dealing with juvenile cases. The draft had been written by a team led by Ambassador Elena Cruz, but it carried input from dozens of species, many of whom now admitted they, too, had lost something by treating young ones as mere future adults. The vote passed unanimously. The Xanthari did not object. In fact, they requested to host the first training session. Telmir was named head of the new Human Xanthari Cultural Exchange. He stood before a room of Xanthari officers and played a recording, not of laws or protocols, but of Lily's voice saying, "We just wanted to see the stars." He watched as even the hardest among them shifted in their seats. Back on Earth, United Earth Defense Command updated its protocols too. Every ship now carried a child safety override, a direct line to civilian command that bypassed military chains if minors were involved. It was a small change, but it meant everything. Weeks turned into months. The Odyssey was repaired and renamed the Lily Star, in quiet honor of the girl who spoke when silence would have been easier. It would carry its next group of children to Proxima Beta with double the guards, triple the comms, and a promise: never again. Elena Cruz stood before the council one last time that year. She did not ask for anything. She did not demand justice or apologies. She simply said, "We protect our own, always." And this time no one questioned it. No one argued. They just nodded because they finally understood. In a small town in Colorado, Lily sat on her porch at night, wrapped in a blanket. The sky was clear, full of stars. Her grandmother sat beside her, sipping tea. "Do you still want to go back out there?" her grandmother asked. Lily thought for a moment. Maybe, but not alone. And not without saying goodbye first, her grandmother smiled. "Good." On Mars, in a training yard for future diplomats, Telmir taught a group of young humans and Xanthari how to play Uno. The rules were messy. The laughter was loud. And for the first time, both species learned that sometimes the simplest games teach the deepest lessons. Captain Holt retired soon after. He bought a small boat and spent his days on a quiet lake in Maine. But every evening he checked the news, not for war or crisis, but for signs that the lesson had stuck. And it had. Trade flourished again. Alliances grew stronger. Even the Xanthari began to soften their edges just a little. The galaxy did not become perfect. Mistakes still happened. Misunderstandings still flared. But one line was now clear to all: harm a human child and you do not face an army. You face an entire species, and everything they are willing to lose to bring that child home. Years later, when new students asked why humans were so respected in council matters, older diplomats would tell the story of the Odyssey. They would speak of 47 children, 3 quiet adults, and a single question that shook the stars. "You detained human children? Are you insane?" And in classrooms, on ships, in gardens, under open skies, the children of Earth grew up knowing they were never alone, because somewhere in the vast dark between worlds, humanity had drawn a circle around them and dared the universe to step inside.